The stars looked different when you owned them all. Commander Taemin stood before the massive viewing screen of the flagship Dominion's Edge and watched another world burn in the distance. The orange glow meant another victory for the Viridian hegemony. Another species that had chosen to resist and learned too late that resistance was pointless. Taemin's pale blue skin reflected the light from the burning planet. His large black eyes showed no emotion as he watched the flames consume what had once been a thriving civilization. The tall Viridian commander had seen this exact scene 847 times before. Each time felt exactly the same. The pattern never changed. First came the warnings. The hegemony would arrive at the edge of a star system and announce their presence. They would explain that resistance was futile and that surrender would mean a quick death instead of a slow one. Most species took exactly 17 hours to make their decision. Some took longer. A few tried to fight immediately. The result was always the same. Behind Taemin, the bridge crew worked in perfect silence. Viridians communicated through their minds as much as their voices. The mental link they all shared meant that orders were understood before they were spoken. Strategies were planned and executed with the speed of thought. No enemy had ever been able to match their coordination. Tactical Officer Hee-jin approached from her station. Her movements were graceful and deliberate like all Viridians. She carried a datapad in her long fingers and waited for Taemin to acknowledge her presence. "Report," Taemin said without turning from the screen. "The Zelthrani homeworld has been neutralized," Hee-jin replied. Total resistance time was 68 hours and 14 minutes, slightly longer than projected, but well within acceptable parameters. Taemin nodded. The Zelthrani had been a warrior species. They had fought with primitive weapons and ancient honor codes. Their bravery had been admirable, but completely useless against Viridian technology. Their plasma rifles could not penetrate hegemony shields. Their fastest ships moved like insects compared to Viridian vessels. "Casualty report," Taemin asked. "0 hegemony losses. 17 ships sustained minor damage from debris. Repairs are already complete." This was the pattern. The hegemony had perfected the art of conquest. They never fought fair battles. They never gave enemies a chance to adapt or learn. Overwhelming force applied quickly and without mercy. It worked every single time. "What is our next target?" Taemin asked. Hee-jin touched her datapad and brought up a star chart. A red dot appeared on the tactical display showing their current position. Another dot, colored yellow, showed their destination. "The Kepler system," she said. "Intelligence reports indicate a species that calls itself human. They appear to be moderately advanced but still primitive by our standards. Chemical propulsion for their spacecraft. Basic energy weapons. No apparent psychic abilities." Taemin studied the display. The human star system looked typical. One main star with several planets. The species had spread to 3 of the worlds and built structures in space around 2 others. Their technology signatures suggested they had discovered faster-than-light travel only recently. "How long have they known we are coming?" Taemin asked. "Approximately 6 standard months," Hee-jin replied. "Our approach has been impossible to hide. Long-range sensors would have detected our fleet when we destroyed the Altarian colonies." Taemin found this interesting. Most species spent their final months trying to evacuate their populations or building desperate defenses. The humans appeared to be doing neither. Intelligence reports showed normal activity throughout their system. Ships moved on regular trade routes. Construction projects continued as planned. Even their military forces maintained routine patrol schedules. "Perhaps they do not understand what they face," suggested Communications Officer Dong-hyun from his station. "Some species refuse to believe the reports about our capabilities until they see them directly." This was possible. The hegemony's reputation often preceded them, but some species dismissed the stories as exaggerations. They assumed that no force could be as powerful as the reports claimed. They learned the truth too late to matter. "Have they attempted any communication with us?" Taemin asked. "Negative," Dong-hyun replied. "Standard monitoring shows they are aware of our approach, but they have made no attempt at contact. No surrender offers, no negotiation requests, no threats or challenges." This was unusual but not unprecedented. Some species preferred to wait and hoped the hegemony would pass them by. Others believed silence would somehow make them invisible. Neither strategy had ever worked. Medical Officer Seung Hwan approached with her own report, the Viridian doctors. Thin frame moved with the same fluid grace as all her people. Her role in conquests was to analyze alien biology and psychology to determine the most efficient methods of subjugation. "I have completed the analysis of human biological data," she said. "They are carbon-based bipeds with standard mammalian characteristics. Average lifespan of approximately 70 to 80 years. They reproduce sexually and appear to form strong social bonds." "Weaknesses?" Taemin asked. "They appear to be remarkably fragile physically. Their bones break easily. Their skin provides almost no protection from environmental hazards. They require constant intake of food and water to survive. Most concerning, they appear to be highly emotional creatures with strong psychological attachments to their offspring and communities." Taemin processed this information. Emotional species were often the easiest to conquer. Fear and despair spread quickly among populations that cared deeply for each other. The threat of harm to loved ones usually broke resistance, faster than any weapon. "Recommended approach?" he asked. "Standard intimidation protocol," Seung Hwan replied. "Demonstrate overwhelming force. Target a civilian population center. Demand immediate surrender. Based on their psychological profile, I estimate resistance will collapse within 12 hours of initial contact." This matched Taemin's own assessment. The humans sounded like a typical primitive species. They had achieved spaceflight, but remained limited by their biology and psychology. The hegemony had conquered dozens of similar races without significant difficulty. Captain Min Ho of the Science Division joined the group. The xenopsychologist had spent weeks studying intercepted human communications and cultural data. His analysis would help determine the exact approach to use. "The humans appear to have a complex but predictable social structure," Min Ho reported. "They organize themselves into competing political units but share common values about protecting their young and defending their territory. They have a concept they call honor, which appears to involve self-sacrifice for the benefit of their group." "Will this honor make them more likely to resist?" Taemin asked. "Unlikely," Min Ho replied. "Honor-based cultures typically collapse quickly when faced with impossible odds. The desire to protect their families will override any abstract concepts about glory or duty." Taemin was satisfied with these assessments. The humans would follow the same pattern as every other species. Fear would overcome honor. Practicality would defeat ideology. Parents would surrender to protect their children. Leaders would submit to save their people. "Time to arrival?" he asked. 6 standard days, Hyejin replied. "Prepare the fleet for standard conquest operations," Taemin ordered. "All ships are to maintain maximum readiness. I want overwhelming force available from the moment we enter their system." The bridge crew acknowledged the orders silently. Mental communications flowed between the Viridians as they coordinated the approach. 300 warships would enter human space in perfect formation. The sight alone had caused 17 species to surrender immediately. Taemin returned his attention to the viewing screen. The burning Zelthrani world had dimmed to a dull glow. Soon, it would be completely dark. Another former civilization reduced to ash and memory. In 6 days, the human worlds would suffer the same fate. The commander felt no satisfaction or regret about this outcome. Conquest was simply what the hegemony did. They were the dominant force in this galaxy because they understood that power was the only truth that mattered. Species that accepted this truth survived as slaves. Those that rejected it simply ceased to exist. The humans would learn this lesson soon enough. Taemin had no reason to believe they would be any different from the 847 species that had come before them. The human star system looked peaceful when the hegemony fleet arrived. Admiral Da-eun watched from the command bridge of the Eternal Supremacy as her sensors mapped every ship, station, and settlement in the area. The humans had detected their arrival immediately, but showed no signs of panic or preparation for battle. 300 Viridian warships materialized at the edge of human space in perfect formation. Each vessel was a kilometer long and bristled with weapons that could crack planets. The flagship alone carried enough firepower to sterilize an entire world. The sight of the assembled fleet had caused civilizations to surrender before a single shot was fired. The humans did not surrender. Navigation Officer Bo Rom reported from her station with obvious confusion in her mental voice. Admiral, the humans are maintaining normal traffic patterns throughout their system. Commercial vessels continue on established routes. Military patrols have not altered their schedules. We are detecting no signs of evacuation or defensive preparations. Da-Yun found this disturbing. Either the humans were incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Past experience suggested the latter was more likely. Some species simply could not grasp the magnitude of the threat they faced until it was too late. Begin. Intimidation protocol, Da-Un ordered. Target the uninhabited moon in the outer system. Full power demonstration. The Eternal Supremacy's main weapon charged with a sound like thunder. Energy collectors across the massive ship gathered power from the vessel's 3 fusion cores. In 30 seconds, the weapon held enough destructive force to obliterate a city. The beam that lanced across space was invisible until it struck its target. The small moon simply ceased to exist. One moment, it was a ball of rock and ice orbiting a gas giant. The next moment, there was only expanding vapor and debris. The demonstration was clean, efficient, and absolutely terrifying. Still, the humans did not surrender. Communications Officer Hyunwoo monitored all frequencies for the expected surrender transmission. Instead, he received something that made no sense at all. Admiral, he said with obvious confusion, the humans are transmitting on standard diplomatic channels. Surrender terms? Da-Yun asked. Negative. They are sending what appears to be a warning. This was unprecedented. No species had ever warned the hegemony about anything. Da-Yun gestured for Hyunwoo to play the transmission. A human voice filled the bridge. The words were translated automatically by the ship's computers. This is Earth Defense Command to unknown vessels. You are trespassing in sovereign territory of the United Earth Alliance. You have committed an act of destruction in our space without authorization. Leave immediately or face the consequences of your actions. The bridge fell silent. Even the mental communications stopped as every Viridian tried to process what they had just heard. The humans had witnessed a demonstration of power that could destroy worlds. They had seen what the hegemony was capable of doing to them. Their response was to issue threats. Captain Min-Ho accessed his xenopsychological databases frantically. This behavior pattern is not documented in any previous conquest, he reported. I have no reference for a species that responds to overwhelming force with demands. Da-Un studied the tactical display. The human fleet was still maintaining normal operations. She could see their warships continuing routine patrols as if nothing had happened. Either they were putting on an elaborate show of confidence, or they genuinely did not understand their situation. Perhaps they believed the moon's destruction was an accident, suggested Tactical Officer Jae-won. Some species refuse to believe. Demonstrations of power are intentional. Then we will make our intentions clear, Da-Un replied. Target the defense platform in Grid 7, the one with 300 human crew members. The weapons officer hesitated. This would be the first time they killed humans. Usually, species surrendered before the hegemony had to demonstrate their willingness to take lives, but the humans seemed determined to learn this lesson the hard way. Fire, Da-Un ordered. The defense platform died in a ball of fire. 300. Humans turned to vapor in an instant. The explosion was visible throughout the human system. Every ship, every station, every settlement would have seen their people die. Now surely they would surrender. They did not. Instead, something happened that Captain Min-Ho would later describe as impossible. A single human warship broke away from the main fleet and began moving toward the hegemony formation. The vessel was roughly 1/10 the size of the smallest Viridian escort ship. It was clearly outgunned by a factor of thousands to 1. Admiral, reported scanner technician Wu Jin, the human vessel is on an intercept course. It appears to be moving to engage our fleet. Da-Yun stared at the tactical display in disbelief. One ship was coming to fight 300. The humans had just watched their people die, and their response was to send a single vessel against an overwhelming enemy force. No species had ever done anything so suicidal. Scan the approaching vessel, she ordered. I want to know everything about it. The results were even more confusing. The human ship showed signs of extensive battle damage from previous conflicts. Its hull was scarred and patched in multiple places. Several weapon systems appeared to be jury-rigged replacements. Yet the vessel maintained perfect formation and showed no signs of mechanical problems. Ship designation is UNS Indomitable, Wu Jin reported. Crew complement approximately 200. Weapons include primitive kinetic cannons and chemical explosive missiles. Armor appears to be basic metal alloys with no energy shielding. These specifications were laughable. The human ship's most powerful weapon would barely scratch the paint on a hegemony vessel. Their armor would not stop a Viridian training weapon. They were essentially flying to their death in a metal coffin. Are we detecting any hidden weapons? Dayun asked. Experimental technology? Something that might explain their confidence? Negative, Admiral. The vessel appears to be exactly what it looks like. A primitive warship with obsolete technology and minimal defensive capabilities. Medical Officer Sung Hwan had been monitoring human communications throughout the engagement. Her readings of their biological responses had become increasingly disturbing. Admiral, I am detecting highly unusual psychological patterns from the human crew, she reported. Their stress hormone levels are elevated to dangerous levels, yet their decision-making appears unimpaired. Most species would be catatonic with fear at these readings. Are they under the influence of combat drugs? Da'un asked. Unknown. The chemical signatures do not match any known substances. They appear to be naturally occurring compounds produced by their own bodies. Da'un tried to make sense of what she was seeing. The humans were terrified but still functional. They were vastly outgunned but still advancing. They had just watched their people die, but still chose to fight, rather than surrender. Captain Min Ho provided another piece of the puzzle. Admiral, I am intercepting internal communications from the human vessel. Their crew appears to be fully aware of their tactical situation. They know they cannot win this engagement. Then why are they attacking? Da'un demanded. I believe they intend to gather intelligence on our capabilities. They are treating this as a reconnaissance mission, rather than a battle. This made slightly more sense. The humans might be willing to sacrifice one ship to learn about hegemony technology and tactics. Such information could help them plan a more effective defense later. It was still suicidal, but at least it had a logical purpose. The UNS Indomitable continued its approach. Dayun could now see it clearly on the main screen. The human ship looked ancient and battered compared to the gleaming Viridian vessels. Yet something about its steady advance was unsettling. There was a quality to its movement that suggested absolute determination. Incoming transmission from the human vessel, Hyun-woo reported. Play it. A female voice filled the bridge. The translator identified the speaker as Captain Yu Na, commander of the UNS Indomitable. This is Captain Yu Na of the United Earth Alliance Navy. You have entered our space without permission and committed acts of war against our people. I am hereby ordering you to withdraw immediately or face the consequences of your actions. The bridge fell silent again. The human captain was ordering them to retreat. She commanded a single damaged warship facing 300 advanced vessels, and she was telling them to leave. Da'un almost admired the sheer audacity of it. The humans might be primitive and doomed, but they were certainly not lacking in courage. She decided to see how far this courage would take them. Open a channel, she ordered. This is Admiral Dae-yun of the Viridian Hegemony. Your resistance is pointless. Surrender now, and your people will be granted quick deaths. Continue to resist, and we will make your suffering last for generations. The response came immediately. This is Captain Yu-na. Go to hell! Da-un had never heard this human expression before, but the translator provided context. It was apparently a suggestion that she should experience eternal torment in a mythical place of punishment. Under other circumstances, she might have found the colorful threat amusing. The UNS Indomitable fired its first salvo. The first human attack should have been meaningless. Fleet Commander Jae-won watched as primitive kinetic rounds streaked across space toward his escort vessels. The projectiles were simple chunks of metal accelerated by magnetic fields. Any hegemony ship should have been able to stop them with basic defensive screens. 3 of the rounds punched through the shields of the destroyer Relentless Tide. Jae-won stared at his tactical display in shock. The human projectiles had somehow penetrated Viridian technology that had never failed before. The rounds struck the destroyer's communication array and sensor cluster with surgical precision. The ship was not destroyed, but it was suddenly blind and deaf. How is this possible? He demanded from his position on the bridge of the Heavy Fist. Weapons specialist Dong Hyun frantically checked his instruments. The human projectiles appear to be using a rotating magnetic field that disrupts our shield harmonics. The effect only lasts for microseconds, but it creates a brief window of vulnerability. This was unprecedented. No species had ever found a way to penetrate hegemony shields with primitive weapons. The technology should not have been possible for a civilization that still used chemical propulsion for their spacecraft. The UNS Indomitable did not pause to celebrate its minor success. The human warship immediately changed course and began moving through the hegemony formation like a predator stalking prey. Its movement patterns made no tactical sense by conventional standards. "The human vessel is using our own ships as cover," reported Navigation Officer Hee Jin. "They are positioning larger vessels between themselves and our main guns." Jae-won had never seen anything like it. The humans were using the hegemony fleet against itself. Their small ship could maneuver in spaces where the larger Viridian vessels could not follow. They were turning the hegemony's numerical advantage into a disadvantage. "All ships open fire," Jae-won ordered. "Destroy that vessel immediately." Hundreds of energy beams lanced through space toward the UNS Indomitable. The human ship should have been vaporized instantly. Instead, it somehow twisted between the incoming fire with movements that seemed to defy physics. Several beams struck hegemony ships instead as the humans used their enemies' own weapons against them. Communications Officer Hyun-woo was monitoring human transmissions with growing amazement. "Commander, the human crew is coordinating their movements manually. They are not using computer assistance for their evasive maneuvers." "That is impossible," Jae-won replied. "No biological nervous system can react fast enough to dodge energy. Weapons fire. The data is confirmed. The humans appear to be predicting our targeting solutions and moving before we fire." This defied everything Jae-won understood about space combat. Energy weapons traveled at the speed of light. No creature could see them coming and react in time. Yet somehow the humans were doing exactly that. Medical Officer Seung-hwan provided a partial explanation. "Commander, I am detecting massive surges in human adrenaline and other stress hormones. Their reaction times appear to be enhanced far beyond normal biological limits. They are essentially poisoning themselves to achieve superhuman performance." The UNS Indomitable fired another salvo. This time the target was the battlecruiser, Inevitable Victory. Again, the primitive rounds found gaps in supposedly impenetrable defenses. The battlecruiser's main gun turret exploded in a shower of sparks and debris. "How are they targeting our weak points so precisely?" Jae-won demanded. Tactical analyst Bo-Ram had been studying the human attack patterns. "Commander, they appear to be using our own sensor emissions against us. Their targeting computers are analyzing our scanning frequencies to locate vulnerable systems." This level of tactical sophistication should have been impossible for such a primitive species. The humans were fighting like they had studied hegemony technology for decades. They knew exactly where to hit and exactly how to avoid retaliation. The battle continued for an hour with no resolution. The UNS Indomitable remained intact despite facing overwhelming odds. 3 hegemony vessels had been disabled by precise strikes that somehow found every weakness in their defenses. The human ship showed damage but continued fighting with mechanical determination. "Commander," reported Engineer Minho, "the human vessel appears to be repairing itself during combat. They are rerouting power through damaged systems and replacing destroyed components while under fire." Jae-won watched in fascination as the human ship performed what should have been impossible repairs. Sections of hull that had been blown away were being patched with salvaged materials. Weapon systems that had been destroyed were being rebuilt using spare parts. The crew was literally rebuilding their ship around themselves as it fell apart. What kind of damage control training produces this level of skill? He wondered aloud. "Commander," Hyun-woo interrupted, "I am receiving a transmission from Admiral Da-yoon. She is ordering all ships to withdraw to minimum safe distance." This was unprecedented. The hegemony had never retreated from a single enemy vessel. Jae-won could not understand why the Admiral would issue such an order when they clearly had the tactical advantage. The answer became clear when he saw what the humans were planning next. The UNS Indomitable had maneuvered itself into the center of the hegemony formation. It was now surrounded by dozens of enemy vessels with no apparent route of escape. Any rational commander would have been looking for a way to retreat. Captain Yuna was apparently not rational. "All hegemony vessels," came her voice over the communication channels. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw to safe distance before I detonate my ship's reactor." The threat was delivered in the same calm tone she had used for everything else. There was no drama or emotion in her voice. She was simply stating a fact. Jaewon realized with horror that the humans intended to turn their ship into a massive bomb. The destruction of a fusion reactor in the middle of the fleet would cause catastrophic damage to dozens of vessels. The humans were willing to commit suicide to hurt their enemies. "Confirm reactor status of the human vessel," he ordered urgently. "Reactor containment is being deliberately destabilized," Engineer Min-ho reported. "Estimate 15 seconds until catastrophic failure." The hegemony fleet scattered like startled fish. Warships that had fought in perfect formation suddenly broke ranks and fled in all directions. The mighty armada that had conquered hundreds of worlds was running from a single suicidal enemy. At the last possible moment, the UNS Indomitables reactor stabilized. Captain Yuna had been bluffing. "All vessels resume previous positions," came her voice again. "Thank you for confirming that you value your own lives more than your mission objectives." Jaewon felt something he had never experienced before in combat. The humans had just demonstrated that they understood psychological warfare better than the species that had perfected it. They had turned the hegemony's own survival instincts against them. The battle resumed, but something fundamental had changed. The hegemony ships were no longer advancing with supreme confidence. They were cautious now, watching for traps and tricks. The humans had planted doubt in minds that had never known uncertainty. Captain Yuna seemed to sense this change. "Attention, hegemony forces," she broadcast. "You came here expecting easy prey. You thought we would surrender when faced with superior numbers. You were wrong." The UNS Indomitable fired again. This time the target was the flagship Eternal Supremacy itself. The rounds struck the massive vessel's shield generators with perfect accuracy. For a brief moment, the pride of the hegemony fleet was completely defenseless. "We know what you are," Yuna continued. "We have studied your tactics and your weaknesses. We have prepared for this day since we first learned of your existence. More human vessels were approaching from the inner system, not many, and all were smaller than the UNS Indomitable, but they moved with the same purposeful determination. The humans were not sending their entire fleet, just enough to make their point clear." "You want our worlds?" Yuna asked. "You want our people? Then come and take them. But understand this, every ship you destroy will cost you 10 of your own. Every world you conquer will require a siege that lasts for years. Every human you kill will be replaced by 2 more who hate you even more." Jaewon realized that the humans were not just fighting a battle. They were sending a message. They wanted the hegemony to understand exactly what kind of war they would face if they chose to continue. The UNS Indomitable was finally showing signs of critical damage. Multiple hull breaches were venting atmosphere. Half of its weapons were offline. Its reactor was operating at dangerous levels. Yet still it fought with the same fierce determination it had shown from the beginning. "This is what resistance looks like," Captain Yuna transmitted as her ship began its final assault. "Remember this when you face the rest of humanity." The battle had been raging for 6 hours, and still the UNS Indomitable refused to die. Tactical analyst Boram watched from her station aboard the Eternal Supremacy as the human vessel performed another impossible maneuver. Half of its hull was gone, its weapons were destroyed, and its reactor was barely functional. Yet somehow it continued to fight. "How are they still operational?" Admiral Dayun demanded for the 20th time. "Their ship should have been space debris hours ago." Boram studied her instruments with growing fascination. The human vessel was defying every principle of space combat she had ever learned. Ships were supposed to become less effective as they took damage. The UNS Indomitable seemed to be getting more dangerous as it fell apart. "Admiral, they are using their own destroyed sections as improvised weapons," she reported. "They just fired a piece of their own hull plating at the destroyer's swift death. The impact disabled its main sensors. This was beyond unconventional tactics." The humans were literally throwing pieces of their dying ship at enemies and somehow making it work. They had turned desperation into a viable combat strategy. Medical Officer Seung Hwan had been monitoring the biological readings from the human crew throughout the engagement. What she found challenged everything she thought she knew about alien psychology. "Admiral, the human stress levels should have killed them hours ago," she reported. "Their bodies are producing chemical compounds at concentrations that would be lethal to most species, yet they continue to function at peak efficiency. Are they using some kind of combat enhancement drug?" Da-un asked. "Negative. These appear to be naturally occurring hormones. The humans seem capable of pushing their biology far beyond normal safe limits when under extreme stress." Fleet Commander Jae-won joined the conversation from his own vessel. The experienced warrior had commanded hundreds of battles, but nothing had prepared him for what he was witnessing. "Admiral, I have never seen anything like this crew," he reported. "They are repairing critical systems while under direct fire. They are rerouting power through damaged components that should not be able to function. They are essentially rebuilding their ship from the inside out." The UNS Indomitable's next maneuver was its most audacious yet. The human vessel deliberately flew into the debris field from a destroyed hegemony escort ship. Most of the wreckage would have been harmless, but some pieces were still radioactive and dangerous. "They are using the radiation from our own debris to mask their sensor signature," reported scanner technician Wu Jin with obvious admiration. "We cannot target them while they remain in the contaminated area." This level of tactical creativity was unprecedented. The humans were not just fighting with primitive weapons, they were fighting with primitive weapons in ways that no advanced civilization would ever consider. They were using the environment itself as a weapon. Captain Min Ho had been studying the psychological profiles of the human crew. His analysis was becoming more disturbing with each passing hour. "Admiral, I believe I understand why the humans continue to resist," he said. "They are not fighting to win this battle. They are fighting to send a message." "What kind of message?" Dae-yoon asked. "They want us to understand exactly what it will cost to conquer their species. Every move they make is designed to demonstrate human capabilities under extreme conditions. This made sense from a strategic perspective. The humans knew they could not defeat the hegemony fleet with a single ship, but they could show the hegemony what kind of resistance they would face on every world, in every system, for as long as the war continued. The UNS Indomitable fired its last functioning weapon. The ancient kinetic cannon had been damaged hours ago, but the crew had somehow coaxed one final shot from its magnetic coils. The projectile struck the battlecruiser Inevitable Victory directly in its reactor core. The massive hegemony vessel exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up half the star system. "How did they penetrate our armor with a damaged weapon?" demanded the captain of the surviving battlecruiser. Bo-Ram had been tracking the projectile's path. "They used a gravity assist from the nearby gas giant to increase the projectile's velocity beyond normal parameters. The impact force was triple what their weapons should have been capable of producing." Even in their final moments, the humans were finding ways to exceed their technological limitations. They were using physics itself to amplify their primitive weapons. The human ship was now completely defenseless. Its weapons were destroyed, its armor was gone, and its hull was held together by emergency patches and desperate hope. Yet still, the crew refused to surrender. "Admiral," Communications Officer Hyun Woo reported, "the humans are transmitting tactical data to their fleet." "What kind of data?" Da-un asked. "Everything. Shield frequencies, weapon patterns, formation weaknesses, command protocols. They have been analyzing our capabilities throughout the entire engagement." The revelation hit Da-un like a physical blow. The humans had not been fighting a hopeless battle. They had been conducting the most expensive intelligence gathering mission in galactic history. Every moment they had survived was another moment to study hegemony technology and tactics. Captain Yuna's voice came over the communication channels one final time. Her ship was dying around her, but her voice remained calm and determined. "To all hegemony forces, this is Captain Yuna of the UNS Indomitable. You wanted to see what humans are capable of under pressure. Now you know. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. We do not break." The human ship's life support was failing. Atmosphere was venting from dozens of hull breaches. The crew had minutes left to live, yet they continued transmitting intelligence data to their allies. Every ship you send against us will face the same resistance, Yuna continued. Every world you attack will defend itself with the same determination. We would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Medical Officer Seung Hwan was monitoring the final biological readings from the human crew. What she saw defied scientific explanation. Admiral, the humans are dying, but their brain activity shows no signs of fear or despair. If anything, they appear to be experiencing satisfaction. Satisfaction? Daun asked in disbelief. They believe they have accomplished their mission. They are dying happy. This was perhaps the most disturbing revelation of all. The humans were not just willing to die for their cause, they were eager to do so if it served a larger purpose. They viewed death in battle as a form of victory rather than defeat. The UNS Indomitable's reactor finally began its terminal cascade failure. The human crew had pushed their dying ship beyond all reasonable limits, but physics was finally asserting itself. The vessel had minutes before it would break apart completely. "Attention all hegemony vessels," Captain Yuna transmitted. "You have witnessed what one human ship can accomplish against impossible odds. Remember this when you face our fleets. Remember this when you attack our worlds. Remember this when you wonder why your mighty empire struggles against a primitive species." The transmission ended as the UNS Indomitable's communication system finally failed. The human ship continued on its trajectory, now nothing more than a collection of debris held together by inertia and stubborn determination. Admiral Da-un watched the dying vessel and felt something she had never experienced before in her long military career. The hegemony had won the battle, but somehow it felt like a defeat. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that challenged everything the Viridians believed about inferior species. "Admiral," Fleet Commander Jae-won reported, "we have multiple human vessels approaching from the inner system. It appears they intend to continue the engagement." Da-yun studied the tactical display. The approaching human ships were even smaller than the UNS Indomitable. By all reasonable standards, they should have been no threat at all. But after witnessing 6 hours of impossible resistance, she was no longer certain what reasonable standards applied to humanity. "How many ships?" she asked. 17 vessels of various configurations. Total crew complement estimated at 4,000 humans. 4,000 humans against 300 hegemony warships. The odds were even more ridiculous than the previous engagement, yet Da-yun found herself genuinely concerned about the outcome. The humans had already proven that conventional military analysis did not apply to their species. The lead human vessel opened communication channels as it approached the battlefield. A new voice filled the bridge, young and determined and completely unafraid. "This is Commander Jinnah of the UNS Defiance. Captain Yuna has shown you what one ship can do. Now let us show you what 17 can accomplish." The UNS Indomitable finally died as its reactor containment failed completely. Admiral Da-un watched the brilliant explosion that marked the end of the most extraordinary battle she had ever witnessed. The human ship had fought for 8 hours against impossible odds and had somehow managed to destroy or damage 12 hegemony vessels before its inevitable destruction. Captain Yuna and her crew were gone, but their final transmission was already spreading throughout human space. Every settlement, every station, every ship in the system had received detailed tactical analysis of hegemony capabilities. The humans had turned their defeat into the most valuable intelligence victory in their species' history. Strategic Analyst Wu Jin approached Da-yun with a data pad containing his preliminary assessment of the engagement. The young officer's usual confidence had been shaken by what he had witnessed. "Admiral, I have completed the initial tactical analysis," he reported. "The results are deeply concerning from a strategic perspective." "Explain," Da-yun ordered. Humans fought knowing they would lose, but they maximized the intelligence value of their sacrifice. They now possess detailed information about our weapons, shields, tactics, and command protocols. This data will make future engagements significantly more difficult. Da-un had already reached the same conclusion. The hegemony's advantage had always been based on superior technology and overwhelming force. But advantages could be overcome if the enemy understood exactly how they worked. Fleet Commander Jae-won joined the conversation from his position aboard the Heavy Fist. His vessel showed scorch marks from near misses during the battle. No hegemony ship had taken cosmetic damage from an inferior enemy in over 2 centuries. "Admiral, the approaching human vessels are maintaining their current course," he reported. "They appear to be implementing the tactical modification suggested by the UNS Indomitable's final transmission." This was exactly what Daun had feared. The humans were already adapting their strategy based on intelligence gathered during the previous battle. They were learning and evolving in real time. "What modifications are they implementing?" she asked. "Their formation is designed to maximize the effectiveness of kinetic weapons against our shield harmonics. They are also using debris from their own destroyed ship as cover and concealment." The approaching human fleet looked nothing like the neat formations favored by most spacefaring civilizations. The 17 vessels moved in a chaotic pattern that seemed random until Daun realized it was actually carefully calculated to present the most difficult possible target for hegemony weapons. Medical Officer Seung Hwan had been analyzing the psychological profiles of the new human crews. Her findings were even more disturbing than her analysis of Captain Yuna's people. "Admiral, the stress hormone levels in the approaching crews are actually lower than those we observed during the previous engagement," she reported. "They appear to be calmer and more focused, despite having just watched their comrades die." "How is that possible?" Daun asked. "I believe they view the previous battle as a success rather than a failure. The destruction of the UNS Indomitable has somehow increased their confidence rather than decreasing it." This defied every principle of military psychology that Daun understood. Watching allies die in hopeless battles was supposed to break morale, not strengthen it. The humans seemed to operate according to completely different psychological rules. Captain Min Ho provided additional insight from his xenopsychological analysis. "Admiral, I believe the humans have a fundamentally different concept of victory than other species. They do not measure success by survival or territorial gain." "Then how do they measure it?" Daun demanded. "By the impact their actions have on future events. They believe that dying well is more valuable than living poorly." The lead human vessel opened communication channels as it entered weapons range. Commander Jinnah's voice carried the same calm determination that Captain Yuna had demonstrated. "Admiral Da-Yun, this is Commander Jinnah of the United Earth Alliance Navy. Captain Yuna has shown you what one ship can accomplish. We are here to demonstrate what happens when humans fight with full knowledge of enemy capabilities." The human fleet attacked immediately without waiting for a response. Their opening salvo was completely different from anything the UNS Indomitable had attempted. Instead of targeting individual ships, they focused their fire on the spaces between hegemony vessels. "What are they shooting at?" demanded Tactical Officer Hai Jin. Scanner Technician Wu Jin provided the answer. "They are creating debris fields to disrupt our formation. The projectiles are designed to fragment and create maximum scatter patterns." Within minutes, the perfect hegemony battle formation was broken apart by clouds of high-velocity debris. Ships were forced to break ranks to avoid collisions. The humans had turned the empty space between vessels into a weapon. The 17 human ships moved through the disrupted formation like predators. They used the confusion and debris to mask their movements while targeting hegemony vessels with surgical precision. Every shot was aimed at critical systems rather than trying to achieve total destruction. "They are not trying to destroy our ships," observed Fleet Commander Jae-won. "They are trying to disable as many as possible." This was another example of human tactical thinking that defied conventional logic. Most species tried to eliminate enemies completely. The humans seemed more interested in creating chaos and confusion than achieving decisive kills. The battle continued for 3 hours, with results that shocked every Viridian officer. The humans lost 9 ships, but they disabled or seriously damaged 43 hegemony vessels. The exchange ratio was completely unacceptable by any military standard. "How are they achieving these results?" Dae-Yun demanded as she watched another destroyer go dark from precision strikes. "They are fighting as a coordinated unit," reported Communications Officer Hyun-woo. "Every ship is sharing targeting data and tactical information in real time. They are essentially functioning as a single organism with 17 bodies. This level of coordination should have been impossible without the telepathic abilities that the hegemony possessed. Yet somehow the humans were achieving the same effect using primitive radio communications and incredible timing." Commander Jinnah's voice came over the communication channels again as her ship executed another impossible maneuver through a debris field. "Admiral Daun, You came here expecting to conquer a primitive species. What you found instead was a civilization that has been preparing for this war since we first learned of your existence. The remaining human ships began implementing a new tactic that Da'un had never seen before. They started deliberately ramming damaged hegemony vessels at high velocity. The impacts were not enough to destroy the larger ships, but they caused critical system failures and disabled weapons. They are using their own ships as kinetic weapons, reported tactical analyst Boram with obvious amazement. They are turning suicide into a precision military technique. The last human vessel, the UNS Defiance, was finally cornered by 3 hegemony battlecruisers. Commander Jinnah had nowhere left to run and no weapons left to fire. Any rational commander would have surrendered. Admiral Da'un, Jinnah transmitted, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that 17 human ships held off your entire fleet for 3 hours. Remember that we chose to fight rather than surrender. Remember that this is what you will face on every human world. The UNS Defiance exploded as its crew detonated their reactor rather than accept capture. The explosion took one of the surrounding battlecruisers with it. Admiral Da'un stood in the silence that followed and tried to process what she had just witnessed. The hegemony had technically won both engagements, but the cost had been devastating. 55 ships damaged or destroyed by 18 primitive human vessels. Strategic analyst Wu Jin presented his final assessment with obvious reluctance. Admiral, if these engagement ratios remain consistent, a full invasion of human space would require our entire fleet and result in catastrophic casualties. What are you suggesting? Da'un asked. I am suggesting that the humans may be unconquerable, using conventional tactics. They do not fight to win battles. They fight to make conquest so expensive that victory becomes meaningless. Medical Officer Seung Hwan added her own disturbing conclusion. Admiral, based on my analysis of human psychology, I believe their resistance will only intensify as we advance deeper into their territory. Each defeat will make them more determined rather than less. Fleet Commander Jae-won provided the most sobering assessment of all. Admiral, the humans have demonstrated that they can learn and adapt faster than any species we have previously encountered. By the time we reach their core worlds, they will have developed countermeasures for all of our current tactics. Da'un realized that the hegemony faced a completely new type of war. They had built their empire by conquering species that fought to preserve their lives and civilizations. The humans fought to make their deaths as costly as possible for their enemies. Prepare a full report for Hegemony Command, she ordered. Include all tactical data and strategic assessments. Command needs to understand exactly what kind of enemy we are facing. As the Hegemony fleet began its withdrawal to regroup and reassess,